Hi everyone, welcome to my Shoreline Studio. I'm Sybille Muschik. Our subject today is aerial perspective. Now, plein air painting is a lot of fun and I particularly enjoy doing that. We'll be starting our video with me painting on site, and it's quite a story because we had this property close to the river, the Fraser River, and we wanted to set up, but of course there were no trespassing signs everywhere. So we decided to be brave and go talk to the owner and see if we couldn't get permission to paint on site, because I wanted to get a little bit closer. So we made contact and it was fine. Very nice person, and the house was lovely. It's a heritage house. So for the plein air part, I sat further back by a tree and we had lovely shade for the most part. And it was a great joy to be painting outside. The weather was perfect, so everything was in really good condition that day. So we have to be very cognizant of the fact that when we're painting the landscape, that the things in the distance are a little bit more blue and shifting towards the violet, especially distant hills and mountains. That's because there's so much more moisture in the air between you and that subject. That's particularly true of the lower mainland close to the ocean. There's an awful lot of moisture in the air there. And so even hills that are closer, seem more diffuse. Colors are not very bright. Things are more grayed out. And as a painter, you should be aware of that. As we get into the middle ground, of course, then things are a little bit brighter, but not very much, and the edges are still sort of blurry. And then as you're working towards the foreground, then of course things are more distinct, the colors are more saturated, you'll see more detail, and those are the kinds of things you should be painting if you are a realist painter. Now, I do a little bit of that. I tend towards the abstract. I may change colors of shadows. I might change objects. I might lose a tree here and there. And, just generally eliminate what I don't want. That's the artist's prerogative. So the group of seven in Canada, the group of seven painters, were renowned for their landscape paintings. And they had a particular style. Now, Lauren Harris particularly was a painter who painted mountains with great panache, and they are very outstanding and they're very distinct. There's no fog or haze in the way there. And he also painted very monumental kinds of paintings. They're huge, some of them, whereas most of the group of seven painters painted much smaller plein air pieces that were on site. So I tend to paint the smaller pieces on site because it's much easier to pack a smaller canvas than it is a larger one, plus all the equipment that you need, especially if you're practically mountain climbing, so which we will do in a future video. As you're sitting there, you have to be ignore a lot of strange things. Sometimes the flies bug you, and people stop and wave at you and so forth. There are lots of distractions, and that's all part of the game. Plein air painting is great fun, and I hope you'll try it. For our second part, we won't be doing the landscape as we do in the plein air. I'm going to be doing the house. Because we did get a chance to talk to the owner, as I said, and we took quite a few photographs of the house itself, and it really makes a lovely subject for a monotype. So you'll be seeing both. So come and join me today, and let's get busy with our plein air painting and our monotypes. We'll see you then. Well, here I am doing the sketching in of the shapes, primary shapes. I'm just using a bit of, I think it's probably raw sienna, just a neutral tone to block in all the shapes. Then I'm blocking in the background. The first areas would be at the distant hills, and I'm keeping them very cool and faint. And then as we move along, we're getting into the middle distance. Again, not very sharp, just large shapes that, you know, indicate the values of the time of day and, you know, the flavor of the area. I'm keeping those tones in the middle, not too bright and not too dark, so the lightest areas are sort of maybe like a raw sienna kind of color. And I'll put even more highlights on later and then darken some sections. So slowly I add in the shadows. I'm using, to try and get everything to coordinate, I'm using the sky color as our shadow color, so it's a bit on the violet side, which is sort of complementary in a way with the trees. Because the road is very light, then the color of the road will inform the lightness of the shadow, so the value of the shadow. I start to paint in a building, but of course eventually, as you can see in the photograph, there's a tree that is blocking most of the building. So the painting is of the building, you know, the farmhouse will mostly disappear, but then it'll be relatively correct considering I've blocked it in and it's in the right proportion, the size, and so forth. The grasses, that's a lot of fun, all the different colors of greens. I'm mixing the violet and a bit of ultramarine blue and probably a little bit of phthalo and the cad yellow deep. As far as brushes, I'm sticking pretty well with the number 5 a square brush and just cleaning it as I need to. I don't clean the brush very often. I want the colors to sort of coordinate, but I'm careful about using colors that are not analogous. I don't really want mud in the painting. So every once in a while you'll see me, the brush will disappear as I'm cleaning it off and getting ready for the next color. And there's a lot of yellow in the grasses, so I've had an underpainting of the darker greens, and then as we come forward, we then put in the brighter yellows. And there's probably some undertones of blue and violet in the grasses as well. Then I think I painted some where the light hits the trees in the background over the darker foliage that is in shadow. So just leaving, I've sort of painted the middle tones for the trees and then overpainted with the brighter areas. So those middle tones tend to be the shadow, but we'll be deepening them further. Now at some point I'm going to be putting sky holes and manipulating my brush so that I'm scumbling a little bit here where I'm dragging the paint down across the foliage areas and in the background. So scumbling is just dragging paint over top of another layer of paint. And you hold your brush differently. You hold it either sideways or straight up, not straight up and down. And at some point I'm scrubbing in as well. That's just to smooth an area where I don't want brush strokes to show, like the sky. And there's the sky holes. Now slowly I add in details. There's the light area in the far left is a slide area. Now that's the area that's just behind there is the road to where I live, Bushy Lake. And that portion of the road just about slowly caved into the river, and there's only a tiny bit of land left next to the road, and it keeps sliding away. So they've shored it up a little bit, but we're all wondering if one of these days we're going to be sliding into the river. I hope they fix it soon. Probably could put a bridge in there. That would be nice. So then we get to the foreground grasses. There are a variety of different grasses in there. All sorts of different plants, things. I don't really put in a lot of detail, so you won't be able to tell exactly what they are. Eventually I'll put the mullein in. They're like very tall. They almost look like miniature cactus, but it's not a cactus, it's a mullein. They have little yellow flowers, and all I do is indicate them. They're interesting, and it's nice to put them in. Then finally I block in the tree that's in front of the house. For the most part it's sunlit. And just, I tend to work all over the painting just to keep coordinating the colors so that whatever color is in one section of the painting is going to be in another section of the painting. And then it all works in harmony in the end. That was one thing I sort of spent a fair amount of finicky time on, was the little truck in front of the garage, in front of the house. But you won't see that because we have speeded up the video considerably, so. This painting didn't take such a lot of time, so the light didn't change a great deal, which was nice. I'm trying to get as much done before, the sun's moved around too far and the colors start to change. If I were doing a longer study, then I would go there the same day, same time every day, and work so that the colors stay the same and the ambience of the piece stays the same. But in this case, I'm working fairly furiously. It's, we have speeded it up, but I'm also working very quickly. And sometimes I use whatever comes to hand, including the hand, to, create whatever I need to create. The road, the furrows in the road, little pebbles eventually. I just put a little shadow in here and there to indicate pebbles. It is an impressionistic painting. It's my feeling of the space and the place that I'm painting. So it's not so realistic, but there is, it's recognizable. If you ever, came down to that point, then I think you would recognize, you know, what I've painted. So I often do that. I give enough information so that you can tell where it was that I painted from. And at the same time, it's my way of working. I've often tweaked the colors a little bit and create what you know, the mood of the time. Okay, almost forgot. This is the house that I'll be working with. I did a preliminary drawing, and so you can see in the photograph, the shadows are very dark. Now, that's particular to a photograph. When you're painting and when you're seeing the subject, the shadows are much lighter and you can see, you know, the detail through them much more easily. Here is my little drawing that I just did. It's a little bit different than the photograph because I'm correcting a few things, and we'll be using that as a subject. As usual, we'll be posting that at the end of the video for you to download and work with me if you like. So, onto the plate. So we're starting off with our usual supplies, the golden open acrylic paints. They're slow drying. My Baren for, you know, brayering the paper, my trusty roller here, the brayer, and some brushes. Usually I work with the University Winsor Newton. This is a University Bright, so a variety of sizes from 3 to about, I don't know if we're going to go to as big as this, a 0. All right. And of course I've got my painting knives, several of them, and a palette knife for mixing paint. This is a painting knife because it has the bump in it. So if you want to do some painting with it, then that's what you use, and use this one for mixing, which is really good. Okay. I'm not going to talk very much throughout this one. We're going to try and run it at a faster speed because it does take a long time to do this kind of work. So I've mixed up the base color in my Masterson palette. We have the Canson mixed media paper ready to go. It's in place here with tape. I just use the painter's tape, the low tack, and I have my drawing underneath that you'll see at the end of the video, and we're ready to start. I've mixed up some of the alizarin crimson with white, add a bit of orange and a bit of Hansa yellow medium, and that will be our base color. So I'm going to roll it, apply it, and then we'll start working on the details. Okay, so let's go. Okay, so we have our base tone, and it's quite a nice color. It will give us sort of the background to the house, and then we're going to add sky and things on top of that. So let's start with the sky. Okay, so the sky is fairly brushy. That's a good undercoat. I'm going to do one more coat to smooth it out a little bit after this dries. So the next we're going to block in the house. And we've already got the base tone, so I'm going to start drawing in certain aspects, and we'll put in the roof. So we have the roof done. Base color again, we'll probably layer a lot of this so you get more depth and you know, more variety in the tones. Okay, so these little roof things are a little bit more sunlit, so I'm going to add some white. So let's try for the house color. We're going to just brighten it up ever so slightly. Fine, so now we have the house color in as far as it goes. We have some really light areas to put in, and that'll be next. And I'm just going to do these sides as well. That's house color, but again, it's more sunlit, so we're just going to brighten that up. So let's put in some of the lighter areas, the white trim. A lot of the trim is actually blue, so we'll put it as a very light blue, and it should be a good contrast to the deeper blue into the sky. So we had a little blob here, but we're going to be covering that with foliage anyway in shadow, so not a problem. Okay, so some of the white areas at the top of the roof. I think this area in here, these are all white areas. So, but of course in painting it's not always a pure white. So we'll just have a touch of blue, maybe with a, just take it down a bit, slightly gray it. So it's slowly coming together. So, okay, we need this color up here, slightly lighter because again there's more light there. So that smoothed out the gray of the roof a little bit. I'm okay with that for now. I don't know how dry that is. We can try for the sky once more. So let's try the same treatment here on this part of the roof. And then we have a couple of, maybe that as well. And that will make it more cohesive. So now I'm going to mix a really nice dark and we'll start to get those windows in. Okay, so some dark now for the windows. We'll start banging those in. So using all the colors that we have, I'm going to mix a good, because we'll be using some greens, we're going to be using alizarin crimson. We'll just use this section here. And I'm going to mix a nice dark. So some diazazine violet, some phthalo green, some burnt sienna, a little bit more alizarin crimson. Just want to get it as dark as we can. And that looks pretty good. Okay, you can see it's coming together. I didn't put all the dark in because often there are reflections, you know, so there's some white spots in the windows and I've left that. So we need some, a little bit of more maybe blue here and a few other little details. So, but let's start putting in the foliage. So we're going to start with the brightest greens. I'm using the Azo Yellow Lemon and some phthalo green, a little bit of ultramarine, and I'm not going to use white because that will make it chalky. I'm just lightening the color with the yellow medium, and maybe a little bit of the yellow lemon, and we'll see how that looks. So that's your base layer for the brighter, a light green. We probably need to have that dry before we put the highlights in, and so we can put the next darks in of the foliage, just to give us an idea where everything is going to go. Okay, now we can see our base layers pretty well. Take your time with these layers. They're the most important. That's your groundwork. We have a few places where we need to put the blue yet, but I think it's coming together pretty well. Here's another post here and more blue sky and so forth. So it helps to get all these things in so that you can actually see, you know, what needs to be done. There's some areas in here that need to be maybe more of the light. And then, of course, the back end of the bush, it needs to be the darker color. But not as dark as here. It has more light on it. So a little more dark. I'm going to let that dry for a while. We need to darken this side. That will be our next layer. And let's put that little middle, whatever sash, whatever it's called. Okay, and we have some blue sky to finish off. Maybe we'll do that first. Okay, that is part of the house. We need to just get that color back in there. We've got most of the sky here. It needs another coat, obviously. And we need to now get that really dark foliage in. Okay, I just want to show you the difference when the light table is off. You can see the colors are starting to come together. The blue needs a little bit, another layer here and here where I've added it after. And we need some blue in between here yet. And then the last parts we're going to do is shadow. But first of all, we have to darken our foliage just to give it some depth and character. Right. So again, mixing phthalo green, alizarin crimson, just to take that starkness down, a little bit of burnt sienna. Touch of the yellow, but not much now because we're trying to get that down. A little bit of our phthalo blue because it helps coordinate our color scheme. So we're just going to start banging in some of this dark stuff. Okay, so we have some darks now in the trees. Now the shadow color is the color of the grass, and then plus its complement. So I have a fair amount of alizarin crimson. I could use a little bit more so you get the feeling of shadow rather than just the, grass. We need it to read as shadow. So I'm just going to smooth it out a little bit more, I think, and add a little bit more red. Okay, when that dries, it will actually be a little bit lighter, so I'm going to leave it alone for now. Now some more details. The final shadow, actually, it's the color of the siding, and it's quite blue. So that's our final shadow on the house itself. So, oh, and I've got to darken the shadow areas on the little bush. So they're all on here. And that looks pretty good. Okay, just in here yet, we have to make sure the sky color is going down in the right place. And I might just put more sky color right there just to make sure that it has the same intensity as up here. It's always lighter close to the horizon as you're getting, the curvature of the earth, you see more space, etc., etc. It's going to be darker up here in any case, but we just need a little bit more color there. So just finishing off this little portion of the house with the windows. So we got to have the next layer of the roof. It's got to be a bit darker so there's more contrast between the house color and the roof. So we can pop that in. Okay, that's better, isn't it? Okay. So now we have the darker blue shadow on the house. And we have it all outlined here, so we can go for it. And we'll use our phthalo blue ultramarine combination. And it's still in here. It could be darker yet for the blue, but we'll deal with that later. Okay, so our shadow color for the house. Just going to add more phthalo to that. It's going to look quite lurid at first, but you'll see how it works. Yes, it's starting to work. We need just one more layer on that. Okay, let's shore up the sky color there a bit. Well, I think we're getting there. Just one more layer of shadow here, I think, for the house. Our shadows are working nicely on there. We probably need some dark details, maybe with a liner brush as the very final thing. So definitely getting there. And let's deal with this part here. That's just the fascia or whatever that's called on here. Okay, outlining certainly helped. Maybe a bit under there yet. I think we're close. So last thing, let's fix up that shadow there. And I think we've got it under control. Maybe a tiny bit on here yet, which is the inside of this doorway. So our final touches, we just got to maybe perk up a few things. I'm happy with the house pretty well. You don't want it to look like it's brand new. It is a heritage house after all. So it has that sort of slightly decrepit look about it, which is all to the good. And most of it would be just tiny little details. So I think we're pretty well got it under control. So, okay, our final here. Going straight into the yellow, we're just going to put highlights here and there. One thing you have to be aware of is that, and I'm rushing things, it would probably print a little bit better if we waited some time before layers. But it is what it is for the video, and you'll have more time to be able to let it dry, and so your layers will be maybe working a little bit better for you, but I'm not too unhappy with it. As usual in acrylic and oil painting, you go from the middle dark to the light to the highlights finally. In watercolor, of course, it's in the opposite direction. You leave your whites. And you put your darks in last. So let's see how that prints. So just add it on top of some of the darker areas. It's the final little touches that make a good painting, whether it's a print or a plein air painting. Take the time to add those last little moments. Don't rush off and frame it right away. Take your time to have a look and see what needs to be done. Sometimes it takes a week or two just to look at things, or more. Some people work for years on a piece. Polishing, just don't overwork it. I'm going to take the light tape off just to show you what the highlights do. Maybe a little bit more on the bush, but I quite like it. And here, I think, and there, which is here on the print. Sometimes because we're working backwards all the time, put your finger where the area is, because you tend to think in terms of, direct, but it's always opposite, right? So it's this area here. So we're just going to shore up a little bit here. And around here. And what can we do here? Maybe up in this corner. Just a few little touches. And some on the bush. I didn't put any birds in there. Next time. I don't remember seeing any birds at the time. I was so focused on the painting aspect of it. And yes, look at that. I've got the light box off, and I think you can see the light. And what I'm going to do is actually, so that the shadow reads transparent, I'm going to put the details in blue, and then it will be transparent. I need my and it will make, because shadows are transparent. And by putting that detail in, I think that's going to read the right way. Just a tiny bit more, maybe a little bit darker. Let's put some of that dark in there. Yes, see, now it does look like a shadow. Okay. Well, it's been a painting adventure for sure. And of course, we've had our plein air adventures. We will be getting in touch with a nice gentleman that allowed us to walk on his property and paint there. That's always a good thing to do. If you are painting on site, and always get permission. It's such a good idea. Well, we'll catch you another time here at Shoreline Studio, and have a great time doing some painting, printmaking, and having a good laugh or two once in a while as well. So thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We really appreciate your efforts in this regard, and we'll catch you another time. Bye for now.